Welcome to Enjoy the Journey podcast, where we interview expert entrepreneurs and thought leaders to help guide you in pursuit of financial freedom. Presented to you by Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, where we help service-based business owners remove cash flow bottlenecks, maximize their profits, and turn business profits into personal wealth. G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of the Enjoy the Journey podcast. And I've got a guest from a very long way away, but we've, from our conversations, we've had some great chats, and I'm really excited to share some of her wisdom with you because she's got a phenomenal story that's going to show you what you can actually achieve if you continue to persevere through hardship and hard times, and all of the amazing things that you can achieve as a result. So, Darnyelle, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I am doing so great, and I'm so excited to be here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I always love having American guests on our podcast because most of our audience is Australian and they always love the accent. Now, I'm sure you're going to say, what accent? What are you talking about?
I know, right?
You're the one with the accent. But it's great to catch up with you. So for those of you who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and what you do, Darnyelle.
To define myself, I am a wife, hopefully one day soon a mother. I am also the CEO of an amazing company called Incredible One Enterprises. We work with six-figure service-based entrepreneurs, and we help to eliminate what we call small business poverty and put them on a path to creating generational wealth. And we do that through coaching, consulting, speaking, trainings, and live events.
Beautiful. I love that. Fantastic. And let's talk about where this all started for you, Darnyelle. So did you get started in business straight away? Were you an employee? Take us back to the beginning where this all began.
Absolutely. So I graduated from college and I went to work in corporate America. Yeah, I was there for 3 years when I became a manager. And then within 3 years after that, I was a vice president running running my own department. And I literally woke up one day, Jackson, and was like, I think there's got to be more to life than this. Sitting behind someone else's desk, pushing paper back and forth and not really doing anything of significance and substance. It was no longer okay with me. When I first started my career, it was totally fine. But as I started to grow and evolve and realized something called personal development, I had never heard of that before. And once I started developing myself, I knew that I was supposed to be doing something greater. There was a greater call on my life. And so I left my corporate career back in 2004 without a plan. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was willing to bet on myself. And so I quit my good job. And while I was trying to figure it out, I sold Mary Kay Cosmetics and I ended up becoming a sales director and then ultimately a pink Cadillac executive sales director, which is a big deal. There's only 2% of the sales force that actually earns the pink Cadillac, and I earned 2 of them. And then about 2.5, 3 years into being in Mary Kay full time, I realized that I had done it again. I call it my Britney Spears moment. Oops, I did it again. I had traded one desk for another. And so that was the point at which I decided to start my own company, Incredible One Enterprises. And we struggled at first. We were mediocre at best. I had no idea what I was doing. Starting a business from the ground up is not like working a proven business model like Mary Kay had been. We struggled really massively. I ended up filing bankruptcy and having to go back to work so that I could figure out how to be an entrepreneur. I worked a job for 2 years while I kind of put myself through business night school, learned all the things that I didn't know. I came back out into full-time entrepreneurship in January of 2011. And here we are 10 years later, running a 7-figure company, really making an impact on the planet.
Amazing. That's a great story, Darnyelle. Wow, what a roller coaster. Let's talk about the first part of this kind of whole idea of kind of creating this job for yourself, because I feel that you've obviously been on that journey of going from a corporate career only into going into another structured environment where you're kind of a pawn on someone else's chessboard. And I've been there myself. And I think many business owners do this subconsciously, where they know that they've worked in a job, so then they just go back to creating another job for themselves, and their businesses rely on them in order to function. Why do you think this is, that we put ourselves into the same positions over and over again?
It's subconscious. Like, we're taught, most of us are taught from being a child. You grow up, you get a good job, you work until retirement, and then you enjoy whatever of life is left. That's what we're taught. And so I think subconsciously we just fall into that pattern, and we think that busyness is having a business. but it's not. And so we do what we did when we worked a job. We push paper back and forth and we move things around and we organize and we make things look really, really neat. And then 8 hours have passed, except now we're not getting a paycheck. And so we actually end up putting ourselves in a position to not be able to enjoy the livelihood that we quit our good job to experience. And so what we have to learn, fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon where you live and what your education system is like, we're not taught entrepreneurship. We're not taught financial literacy. So most of us learn it through trial and error, through experiencing the worst of the worst and realizing that there's got to be a better way. And fortunately, unfortunately, again, depending upon where you live and how you were raised, we aren't taught to be creative, independent, and to produce our own livelihood. We're taught to rely on others to experience what we want out of life instead of realizing that we have the power within us. And so ultimately, I feel like in my experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong from your experience, Jackson, we can't become entrepreneurs when we get fed up with the system, right? Whatever the system is, when we've had enough, we can't take it. We're tired of being misused, abused, and underpaid for the value that we are bringing to the organizations where we're working. And we think that we can find a better way. We can build a better mousetrap. That's when we start to push the status quo and challenge it enough to look for something different. And often at that point, it is like starting from scratch. Like I was clear, I didn't want to sit behind anyone else's desk, but I also wasn't taught entrepreneurship. I was taught how to be a great employee. And so I threw up my own shingle and I was busy in my business without actually building a business and making sure that we had enough customers and paying enough attention to the numbers and all of the things that make a difference into getting a business to the point where it's viable and then ultimately scalable. And so what I love about what you and I both do is we have the opportunity to teach people at the onset or at the point at which they come into contact with us, the things they need to be doing so they can establish that livelihood.
I agree with you 100%. Like I know through my own firsthand experience, it was this vicious cycle of creating a job for myself and you're right, staying busy. And I think all of us get to this catalyst point. There's like a crossroads where enough is enough and it's like a breaking point. And for me, it was when my father passed away at 66 and like he'd been working like a dog his entire life, 16 hours a day in order to live this amazing retirement. And then he didn't even get the opportunity to enjoy it.
That's
And
sad. I'm sorry to hear
it's
that.
very sad, but I think I'm fortunate that I had that opportunity. I had that experience because I had the ability to learn from someone else's mistakes and then be able to use that as power to be able to craft a better path for myself. And I'm sure that was very similar for you when you declared bankruptcy. And look, this is, I guess, something that's very intimate to share. And I think something that really annoys me, Darnyelle, is that so many entrepreneurs only talk about all the glory and they don't talk about the hardship. So talk us through a little bit about this bankruptcy situation and what were the main lessons that you learned from that situation?
Yeah. And I used to be embarrassed. Like when it first happened, I vowed no one would ever know. I would take it to my grave. And something interesting happened at one of my live events. It kind of popped out. And when it popped out, something amazing happened in the room. I became real for the attendees. Prior to that, I was this untouchable mentor standing on the stage that had no idea what their life was like, right? Because that's what we do. Like you said, like we tell the glory side and we never tell the part when we're down in the valley. And I realized that we do entrepreneurship, small business ownership, all of it a disservice to not keep it real and tell what we've actually been through. And so leading up to, so when I left my job in 2004, I had about $250,000 liquid, not to mention what I had in my investment accounts or whatever. I had been a very good steward up until that point. The biggest challenge that I made, which led me to bankruptcy, was two things. Number one, I didn't alter my lifestyle when I went into entrepreneurship. I kept living like there was a paycheck coming every 2 weeks. Yeah, that's a big problem. And so you can go through $250,000 really fast. I think it took me about 2 years. You can go through $250,000 really, really fast when you're living at a specific level without any thought to what happens when the money runs out. Like I never thought about that. And then the second thing that I realized in experiencing this is that I relied far too much on someone else and not on my own transferable skills. And so even once I was, in Mary Kay and deciding to send my pink Cadillac back to the company to start my ground up business, I wasn't realizing what skill sets I had that would be transferable in my business because I was just thinking that this was the way it had to be, right? I was so hell bent on not having a schedule I had to keep every single day and not having to be somewhere at any point in time. I wanted that ultimate freedom that we do this for. But what I failed to realize at that particular point in time is that you can't get to freedom until you have a plan and a strategy and consistency. And so by not having those things in place, I ended up burning through the money. The business was not producing at the same level. And my prices actually weren't set up to support self-employment. My prices were set like I was still an employee, right? When you're an employee and you make $100 an hour, you're doing really well. When you're self-employed and you're making $100 an hour, you're actually making less than minimum wage when it's all said and done, once you take out self-employment tax and all of the other expenses that go along with it. And so it never clicked that now that I'm self-employed, I have to do things differently. So I was trying to be my own business owner, still operating like I was an employee. And so that is what led me to that particular point. That ran through the money wasn't coming in, and it got really, really bad. I realized I had two options, right? So in addition, I still ended up having to file bankruptcy, but I would have lost my home if I didn't humble myself and go back to work. Because there's also this pride element that plays in, Jackson. When you're at your worst, you still have the audacity to think that you're better. And so here I am at my lowest point at that particular point in time in my life, and I'm in denial that I can fix it on my own, right? Or at least let me make it about me. I got so proud that I could turn things around, but I realized that if you want something you've never had, you need to do something you've never done. And sometimes you don't know what to do. You don't realize, like, I love one of the quotes I live by to this day is, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. I couldn't read my own label, and I'm inside the jar trying to manipulate and maneuver my business, and it wasn't working, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I did the only thing I knew to do, because I knew I could get a job based on my skill sets. I went back to work, and I used that job to go to night school again. Like, I hired my first coach. I have an MBA, and even when I left corporate America, but my MBA, again, it wasn't entrepreneurship. It was exist in a corporate structure. And so I studied and I read books, and I figured out how to create a business plan and how to do all of the things that I needed to be able to do to be able to sustain my business. And I'm so proud, to be able to say 3 years later, we crossed the 7-figure mark for the very first time, because I was diligent and I allowed myself to not get stuck at that point, a low point. And I just used it as a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. And I decided to do whatever I had to do. There's this John Assaraf quote. He says, when you're interested, you do what's convenient. But when you're committed, you do whatever it takes. Going back to work was whatever it took. Eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly for 18 months where I barely kept the lights on and kept the roof over my head and had a car to drive was whatever it took. Studying nights and weekends and learning what I didn't know about ground up entrepreneurship was whatever it took, because I was fully committed to this being my life one day. And today I have the pleasure of having an amazing team. So I don't have to work 24/7. Like, I keep regular hours. I probably work less than 40 hours a week. And I've got this amazing team that's supporting my efforts, believes in my vision, is helping me to do the work and I do in the world. And the interesting thing, Jackson, is I wouldn't change it. There's this old saying in the Black community, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. I wouldn't change my journey at all, because I think it makes me so much more relatable to the entrepreneurs today, right? It's why I can boldly say a low 6-figure business is small business poverty. Because even when I got to the $100,000 mark, I hadn't made it big. Nothing in my life really changed, although I technically had made it if you looked at the statistics. And so I wouldn't take anything away from that, except for all of the lessons that I came out of it with, really learning grassroots marketing, right? Being an organic marketer to be able to grow my business massively in a very short period of time in the grand scheme of things. 3 years to 7 figures is like, who does that? And so I wouldn't trade what I've been through to be able to create that and have that today.
Oh, wow, what a story. That's amazing. And look, I think this fills many people with hope, because I think entrepreneurship is about perseverance above anything else.
Yeah.
It's hard. And like, there's so many people out there that glorify entrepreneurship. And I think entrepreneurship is really trendy these days.
Mhm.
But people aren't out there telling people how difficult it actually is. And you're right. Like this becomes life or death situation. Like
Mhm.
failure can't be an option. And if you're not passionate about your business, if you don't live and breathe it, if you don't love it deeply, then you're not going to stick the course because it's bloody hard. And so let's talk about businesses who get to that six-figure mark, because I guess six figures is where you prove that you've really got a business. You've
Yeah.
tested the market, you've really got a business, you've got something that's viable. So, in your experience, Darnyelle, what are the key factors that get a business from six figures to seven figures?
Wow, this is such a great question. So I always say what got you to six won't get you to seven, because you can get to six figures by accident. You really can. It's because it's not hard to get to six figures once you're clear about the product, the problem you solve, the product that you're marketing, and the price point that you have, the three P's of marketing. Once you have those consistently, and then you determine however you're going to get in front of enough people to be able to do it, right? I remember before we shifted our focus to working exclusively with six-figure business owners, we used to help people get to six figures. And it's simple. We create a $10,000 offer and help them go sell 10 of them, and they'd have a six-figure business. So it's not hard to get there. But to get to seven figures, you have to go from potentially hustling and grinding for leads or starting from scratch every time you want to sell your products and services to lots of systems and automation, right? You've got to change the way that you deliver your service, because now we've got to be talking about scale. You can't work one to one. You've got to have a service that works one to many. And a lot of people I have a lot of clients when they first come to me at six figures, they've built their business completely through private access and working one-on-one with their clients. And I'm like, that's great, but you got to now figure out how you can do this with multiple people at a time. Even if you get other service providers on your team, we call that your talent team, you still have to be able to take and prove that what you've been doing one-on-one will now work one to many. So that's often a big shift in the service delivery model that business owners are in. You also have to change the way you look at your numbers and the way you look at money. Your KPIs, getting to six figures, you could do that without tracking any key performance indicators. To get to seven figure, you got to get really clear about, and these are just a few, your client acquisition costs, right? Your gross profit per transaction. Every single time you sell a service, what is the percentage of profit that you earn on that, right? Your sales conversion. How many people do you need to talk to get a yes? And how many yeses do you need to hit whatever the money milestone is? Like, so you really have to dial in on those particular numbers. And those are just a few. There's so many different things that really have to change. But the big ticket items are your systems and your automation, your service delivery, looking at your KPIs more succinctly and really understanding them, and then also evaluating who you need to have on your team. See, it's okay when you're just getting to the six-figure mark to be doing those $20 tasks. It's okay to be your admin or to have a part-time virtual assistant. But if you want to be at seven figures, you need a full-time executive assistant so that your time and energy is only spent on those $2,000 tasks and not those $20 tasks. And so a lot of times that is a struggle for people because they love checking their own email or they love organizing their file. Like, no, that's not the best and highest use of your time. And so helping them to realize that they're also not charging for their time, they're charging for their result. So whatever they were charging before, it has to massively increase to produce scale. We have clients that we get to scale with to get to $1 million with 50 clients or less, because we look at their packaging, their pricing, and their overall strategy and how they're going to deliver it, and leveraging all of those things to be able to help them make that move to the $1 million mark.
This is amazing. Yeah, I love that. I think this is really key. And you hit the nail on the head. These are the things that I know in our business as we've gone to seven figures and then well beyond that, is these are the exact things that we've done and makes the biggest difference. And I think the hardest part here, Darnyelle, that I found in my experience is that people end up becoming the hero to their own story when they've got a six-figure business, because the business is typically them. Handing over those reins or relinquishing that control and then stepping up into that kind of manager and leader position is a really difficult transition. I know for myself, allowing the ego death to not be the one that was always delivering the results to my clients and then stepping into that CEO position was really difficult for me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I graduated from the if you want something done right, do it yourself school.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for me to relinquish control. It was interesting because I had hired coaches that were starting to serve my clients. And my coach at the time was like, I want you to ask your clients if they need you. Because I was like, they need me. They're hiring me, right? Holding on to it with my tight little hands, preventing myself from even going to the 8-figure mark, which is our next stop. And so I asked my clients and I said, how many of you are getting transformation and I'm nowhere around? Every hand went up, Jackson. And so I realized that I'm not needed for my business anymore, which is awesome. It's what you want. It's the goal, right? Like I can take 3 months off if I want and the business will still run, right? That's the goal. That's the next goal. Once you get beyond 6 figures and you're approaching 7 figures, is that your business doesn't require you to be able to make money. And a lot of people, because of what you said a minute ago about the ego, they're not comfortable with that. Like they want to be the hero of their own story. And so it makes it harder for them to experience the transition because they think it has to be all about them.
Exactly. Yeah. And look, I think at the end of the day, business is meant to be a vehicle. It's not the destination. And I know for myself, realigning that and being able to take time out of my business and use my business as a vehicle to fuel my other goals, dreams, and ambitions, that's what it's all about. And I think that's really key. So we've spoken about a couple of the mistakes that people make. What are the other big faux pas or the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to scaling a 7-figure business? Where do they get hung up? Where do they lose traction? Where do they start falling behind?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that come into mind right immediately. And the first is SOPs, your standard operating procedures, and making sure everything is documented and digitized. So whether that's video or audio, so that every single function on the team can be done by anyone who comes onto the team. We've made this mistake before. We used to hire 1 person at a time for a role. Now, for most roles, we hire 2 people at a time because almost in that first 90 days, someone doesn't cut it. And if you only hire 1 person at a time and you don't have enough people on your team, who has to go back to work in that function? You do. And so it prevents you from having those high level strategic insights that are necessary to move the company forward. Like I always say, our goal is to run our business from our vision point, not our vantage point. See, if I'm still trying to run my business at 7 figures, I'm not going to make it to 8 figures. I have to be running my business today as if it's already producing at 8 figures. And the only way that I can do that is if I have enough team. So I've got to have all my SOPs in place. I've got to hire 2 people for every role because it's possible that one doesn't cut it. And if they do both make it, it's great because now you've got capacity to continue to expand your reach, right? The other thing I think that needs to change are your budgets. When you're getting to the 6-figure mark, like you can get to 6 figures completely organic. You could probably even get to 7 figures completely organic. We did, right? But to really scale, you have to then pour gasoline on your lead generation, on your traffic sources, on your lead generation, so that you have enough numbers consistently coming in, because business is a numbers game, to get the conversion that you need to continue generating at that, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million a month, if those are the goals that you have. And so someone has to become focused on looking at the analytics and the KPIs and the data. So this is typically the point at which to get to 6 figures, you could just have an EA, but to get to 7 figures, you also now need a person in the operations function. So whether that's an ops manager or director of operations, it's probably not starting at COO, but you can create a career path and progression in that role. You now need someone whose focus is going to be that, because up until that point, it's been yours. And if you're focused on the day-to-day management of the company, you can't be focused on the vision of the company. And so hiring into that position is really, really important. And we find it. We have so many clients that are at that point and they're nervous because it's a costly position, right? Well, it's an investment, but it's going to be a lot from a payroll perspective because you want a full-time person, not a contractor who works with you and 20 other people, because then your business is being neglected some of the time, or you have to fall back into the operations role and manage when your team member is off working with their other clients. And so it can be a big leap to now be starting to pay those salaries that are, $85,000, $95,000, and maybe even $100,000 a year, to have that person that's going to strategically preside over the day-to-day so that you can be thinking about tomorrow for your business. So those are some of the other things that I see just around, again, the SOPs and the hiring, who needs to be on your team, and the point at which you need to introduce that operations person to take that off of your plate so that you can strategically preside.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we did in our business is hiring a general manager.
Mhm.
And because there's so many little fires and things that you got to put out every
Yep.
day, and it's so hard to think big picture and drive the business forwards when you're stuck in the weeds, right?
Yep.
And it's when you can get that off your plate to somebody who's a specialist who loves that, loves dealing with the team, loves checking the KPIs, loves all of the operational stuff, that you can really make some meaningful differences in growing and scaling your business. So I think people take too long to do that. And I guess people who might be listening to this, Darnyelle, they go, wow, okay, that's a big salary. Like they might be earning more than the owner. How do you warrant or justify dropping 100K on, say, a general manager or a head of operations or something like that? How do you know you're ready?
That's such a great question. And I get it because I felt the same way, right? I had to look at it this way. If I pay this person, let's say it's $100,000 a year, and they free me up to do the role that I am only supposed to play in the company, and as a result, we're able to 10x the business, right? And this is just my position. Other business coaches may tell you something different, but your ops role, you should 10x your revenue. So that means you need a specific skill set. You need a person who understands marketing and sales and business and general operations. You can't just bring somebody in and teach them. Now, yes, there are going to be some things that you're going to have to train them on because your company is unique and your culture may be unique. They have got to come to the table with a level of skill sets that's going to accelerate the path with which you take to scale your business. And so when you think of it that way, I would spend $100,000 every day of the week, Jackson, to make $1 million.
100%.
Every day of the week, I would do that. And so when you look at it, that's why I said earlier, vision point, not vantage point. Because if you look at it where you sit today, then you're going to be leery of it. But if you look at it based on where you want to be sitting tomorrow, then all day long, if you believe in yourself, if you even have the vision to have a company that's generating at the $1 million mark, you believe in yourself. You've proven concept. You've gotten some transformation into the lives of other people. You're making an impact. Your children are seeing life differently if you have children, all because of the work that you do inside of your business. Continue to bet on yourself, continue to bet on your business. Go find the best people to fill the role so that you can 10x your revenue, and it happened relatively easily. And allow this to be the barometer, right? Beyond the first 90 days, although there should be results showing and demonstrating that you made a good choice in hiring that person in the first 90 days. But within the first 90 days, if you don't see mile markers that they're on a trajectory to really scale your business, then that means you didn't hire the right person and you might need to go back to the drawing board. The saying is hire slow, fire fast. So this is why we need metrics and performance appraisals and clear expectations of what needs to be done inside of a role. And this is why you also need a person who understands business and not someone who just decided yesterday to call themselves a virtual operations person, right? Like you got to do your due diligence in hiring, which is why we hire slow. But then you also have to be very clear about what the position demands and fire fast. Because I don't care how much money we make in this business. I don't have any money to waste, Jackson. None. So every single role is purposeful. Every single person is contributing to our ROI and our bottom line and helping us to get the business to the next level and serve our clients at a level that they will continue to invest in themselves through us. And so from that vantage point, we hire. From that vantage point, we give directives about performance and milestones and their own individual KPIs that they need to be working towards. And so that's going to be an important part of the process. And I don't want anyone to do it haphazardly. It takes time, and it probably is going to take some guidance and support, whether that's from a Jackson or a Darnyelle or someone else, to be able to help to make sure that you are thinking about the blind spots that you can't see yet because you're not already at that mark. Like that's the most important reason for us, is because we can see the blind spots. We can look at your label while you're sitting inside the jar and make sure that the decisions that you are making are actually going to serve the ultimate goal that you have for yourself, for your company, for your community, for your legacy. All of that is a part of all of this, right? And that's one of the things that made me so excited to be getting to know you, Jackson, because of your commitment to generational wealth as well. And our businesses, as you said earlier, are the vehicle that I believe God created for us to be able to create generational wealth. And so it's so important that we be great stewards and we hire even better stewards than we ourselves are over our vision, over our mission, and over our mandate for the planet.
So many value bombs. This is amazing. So good. So Darnyelle, some people have listened to this and they really love what you've had to say. And maybe they're interested in having a chat with you and your team around how they might be able to work with you in a high capacity to get them from 6 figures to 7 figures. So talk to us a little bit about how it looks to work with you and your team.
So our coaching and consulting suite is called Incredible Factor University. So we have a lot of frameworks, but our primary framework is called the Incredible Factor. It's helping our clients get really, really clear about that unique and compelling gift that they have that it then translates into solving a problem that their clients can't solve on their own, for which they can be well paid. And so Incredible Factor University is our umbrella. We have 2 programs there. Leverage and Scale Weekend is our 12-week program that we help you lay the foundation for your first 7-figure year. So we look at what we call the most important $1 million assets for your business. We help you to develop them and tighten them over the course of a 12-week period. And we support you through a launch of your $1 million assets. And then our second program is our Move to Millions Mastermind. And so once you have gone through our first program, then you can come into our mastermind and we support you to create the other $4 million assets and build out your business and infrastructure to get you to the 7-figure mark. And what we see happening is that 80% of our clients cross the $1 million mark every year, and 20% of our clients, I think I said that wrong. 20% of our clients cross the $1 million mark every year, and 80% of our clients grow their businesses by at least 200% and hit the next mile marker on the move to millions. So we typically are seeing our clients get to the $1 million mark, and most people come to us around 150 to 200K. And so we're seeing them get to the $1 million mark inside of 2 to 3 years. Although we do have people every year who do it in less than a year. It just really depends on what the conditions are and how many things are already in place. But we work with you on a trajectory over the course of typically 3 years to get yourself to the $1 million mark, and to do it in a way that doesn't just make you a $1 million company, but also builds generational wealth for your family. So as a part of our business, we've got a resident financial advisor on our team. We've got an IP attorney on our team. We've got an HR consultant on our team. We've got a financial management consultant and tax strategist on our team. So we're looking at everything that you're doing and everything that's going on in your business. We start with a really powerful audit to find out what the holes are that we need to plug. And we help you to get everything in place before you hit 7 figures, so that you don't hit the 7-figure mark and end up giving all of your money to the government in taxes. We want to make sure that we're setting your business up to actually sustain the legacy that you want to develop because of your business. And so if you'd like to learn more, you can go to partnerwithdarnyelle.com.
Beautiful. We'll include the links in the show note. This has been super valuable, Darnyelle. This really gives us some really great clarity. So I think there's a lot of business gurus out there that talk about all of this sexy stuff, and they don't talk about the things that really push the needle forwards. And from our conversation today, everything that you've spoken about are fundamental things that are really going to push the needle forwards and get you closer, not distract you from that 7-figure goal. So as a parting point, what's one last piece of advice you'd like to give our listeners?
Yeah, we didn't talk a lot about mindset, because there is a distinct role that mindset plays. And there, different people give it a varying statistic. I believe that 95% of your success is mindset, especially when we're talking about changing a financial wealth story for a family, for a generation. It's often because where we come from, we aren't taught fiscal responsibility. We don't understand financial literacy, and we don't see money as exactly what it is. And so we spend a lot of times with our clients as well, working on the mindset, getting them to believe that they are worthy and they do deserve to generate money at that level because of whatever they were taught. I work a lot with women. We don't just work with women, but primarily women. And women, by and large, when they're children, they're silenced, right? When they try to rise up in their brilliance and their excellence, they're silenced. Like, I can remember being told, Darnyelle, go sit down. Like, be quiet. You should be seen and not heard. Children should not speak up for themselves. And we carry that into adulthood. We carry that into our businesses as entrepreneurs. And now we're finally given the green light to speak our truth and to be that voice. And we're afraid to do it because we've been silent so long. So we spent a lot of time working on mindset as well. So I would say, while the numbers are extremely important, what is more important is making sure that you have a mindset that supports your vision to live a life at and beyond the $1 million mark. If you do not believe it is possible for you, you will never see it. If you change your mind, you will change your money. And when you change your money, you'll be able to change the planet. So my name is Darnyelle Harmon. It's been my joy hanging out with you. And I just hope, if nothing else, that you realize you do deserve it. You are worth it. And the world is waiting for you right now to come and get it.
Yeah, this has been amazing, Darnyelle. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. So many value bombs. So, guys, if you listen to this episode and anything that Darnyelle's spoken about resonates with you, just remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea unless you take action. So please feel free to reach out. Darnyelle, thanks again. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Take care, everyone.
See you later.